Hi everyone, this video is going to show you how to draw a 10-head croquis for your fashion illustrations. Some materials you're going to need are paper. I just used regular computer paper, but you can also use drawing paper, a pencil sharpener, an eraser if you have one, a ruler if you have one, and if you don't have a ruler, you can use the edge of a book. You're also going to need the croquis reference sheet, which is in the link below. So croquis is French for sketch, and what we mean by 10 head is that the head is used as a measurement tool so that we make sure that the proportions are correct. And in a typical fashion illustration, the body is going to be more elongated than normal proportions. So if it looks a little bit stretched out or weird, that's okay. So what I'm doing here is just mapping out what areas are each part. So for instance, the first one is the head, and then in the middle of head 2 is where the shoulders are going to start. At the bottom of head 3 is where the waist is going to go. And you can write this on your own paper, or you could use the video as a reference as well. At the bottom of 4 is the crotch, and in between 3 and 4 is. So then between 6 and 7 heads is going to be the kneecaps. The top half of 7 is going to be where the calves are the widest. And then at the bottom of 9 is where the ankles will go. And then head 10 is where the feet will be. Then the elbows are going to be right at the waist at the bottom of head 3. And the wrists are going to be at the bottom of head 4, where about the crotch is. So now that you have that all mapped out, now we're ready to start your drawing on a separate piece of paper. I like to keep mine next to it so that I can use it as an easy reference. Next, we're going to draw a 10-inch line so that the head will be 1 inch, and I'm going to make a mark at every inch so that I know it's even. So mark at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, if you don't have a ruler, that's okay. You can use the edge of a book or some other straight edge. Draw a line down the middle. And then start off drawing a head that's about the size of the top of your thumb. So a small oval shape at the top. And then you're going to use the head as a measurement tool. So I use my thumb and my pointer finger to keep the measurement. And then I move my hand down in different increments and do 9 sections, because the head counts as section 10. It might not be as perfect as using a ruler, but it will get the job done. And then next to it, I'm just labeling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just because it makes it a little easier to look at it in comparison to the reference on the left. So the first thing you're going to do is draw an oval for the head, not a circle. So if you have a hard time drawing an oval, you can put a line through the middle that's a little bit shorter than the length of the line, and then connect it almost like you were connecting the pizza crust on a pizza. And do it just section by section. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put in where the shoulders will go between head 2. So draw a straight line going across, and then we're going to add the neck in. The neck is usually a little bit wider than you might expect. Most people draw it a little too skinny. And then when you draw the shoulders across, it's going to be 2 head widths wide. So mark it off at the width and add a small circle for where the shoulder joint would be. The next thing that we're going to do is add in where the waist is going to go. So we go down to 3, the bottom of head 3, and draw a small line across. And this is going to be about the width of one head. Now this is for your standard model. If you were doing a plus size model, or if you were doing a male, you might have it a little bit wider there. And then you're just going to connect those dots so that you have sort of an upside down trapezoid shape. Next we're going to add in the hips, which falls in between head 4, and it ends at the bottom of head 4. So draw a line at the bottom of head 4 going across, and typically the hips are going to be about the same width, so 2 head widths wide. And then you're going to connect to make a right side up trapezoid. And this will give you sort of that hourglass shape of a female. Right below the hip, you're going to draw a small line that starts at the top of head 5, and this is going to be the crotch, and then you're going to connect the lower hip joints to the crotch area. Next we're going to add in the knees. So the knees fall at the bottom of head 6, and you're going to draw 2 circles for the kneecaps, and make sure they're spaced out enough. And then directly below those kneecaps, you're going to draw 2 smaller circles for the ankle joints at the bottom of head 9. And then I like to use a ruler or a straight edge to connect them, just to make sure that they are directly above each other. If your ankle goes out a little bit, your legs might look like they bow out or in, which will look funny. Then we're going to connect the crotch and the hip area to the knees. So I like to draw a small line sort of between the kneecaps, and then you're making still a trapezoid shape, but it's elongated, so it should be wider up at the hips and then taper down and get a little bit smaller by the knees. And then same thing for the calves. I like to make a little line going across, and then this is difficult, but it's going to be another elongated trapezoid, so it should be a little bit thicker up at the top and then a little bit thinner down at the bottom. You might want to use a ruler for this. So this is what you should have so far. And next what we're going to do is we're going to add in the arms. So right at the waist, we're going to put a small circle for the elbow joints. So that's at the bottom of head 3. And then across from the hips at the bottom of head 4, you're going to put in a small circle for the wrists. And then we're going to do the same thing we did with the calves and the legs. You're going to create a long trapezoid. Now I see a lot of people make a mistake where they add the trapezoid to the corner of the shoulder, and this is wrong. This will make the person look like they have really wide shoulders. You actually want it to sort of overlap so that it creates sort of like an armpit area. Then you're going to do the same thing for the forearm, and you're going to make a small elongated trapezoid. So it should be a little bit thicker up near the elbow and then taper down and get a little bit skinnier down by the wrist. This is a bigger view so you can see. Smaller at the bottom and a little bit bigger at the top. Next we're going to draw a very simple hand. So you're going to draw sort of like a sideways V, and then we're just going to draw a small rectangle with a little bit of a rounded edge for the thumb. So I'm just going to add the hands down here, make sure that the V is facing outwards and that the thumb is on the inside. Otherwise, you'll have two right hands or two left hands. And the hands are usually longer than you would expect. So you can make them sort of go down so that they're mid-thigh around head 5. So now that you have a basic outline, we're just going to round things out so it looks less like a robot and more like a human. And we're going to go through this kind of fast, but you're basically going to just round the edges of the shoulders. You're going to add a little bit of a scoop near the neck for the trapezoid muscle. And you can erase some of the guidelines on the inside so it looks a little smoother as well. Next, we're going to add just like some small bumps to the muscles of the arm, and it's very gradual. You don't want it to pop out too much or the person's going to look like they have balloons for muscles. So it's going to be very subtle lines to accentuate the muscles in the body. Next, I'm going to round out the waist a little bit. And in this instance, if you wanted to, you could make the waist or the hips a little bit wider if you wanted to, depending on what type of model you were wanting to draw. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Remember to keep that shape where it tapers down to the elbow and then it tapers down to the wrist. Otherwise, they're going to look like their arm is the same thickness throughout. And then on the inside of each of the knees, we're going to make a little bit of a hook, and then on the back side of the knee is going to go in a little bit. Then you're going to thicken where the calves are. And that's between head 6 and 7. So remember to go in at the back of the knee and then go out a little bit again to create the thickness of the calves. Then we're going to make a little bump on the outsides of the ankles to represent the ankle bone. And then the feet are going to look like giant paddles or duck feet. That's because we're looking at the top of the feet. And then if you'd like to draw the bust in, which you don't have to, but you can, it's going to fall in between 2 and 3. And you're just going to kind of create a U shape there. This might not be necessary because the clothes that you make, depending on if they're loose fitting or if they're tight fitting, might not show. So that's up to you whether or not you decide to draw the bust. So for this demonstration, we're going to be using decades for outfit inspiration. So I'm going to do a blazer from the 80s with the big shoulders and a dress underneath in the style of a 1920s flapper girl. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make the shoulders. And when you make clothing on your model, you don't want it to, you want to follow the shape of the body that you've made. So here I'm going around, making a circle around the wrist, and I'm making the shoulders a little bit bigger than the body, but not too much because it's not that bulky. Then I'm going to make the lapels. And you want to think about the flow of the fabric and how it's sitting on it. I end up adjusting this multiple times because I don't get it right the first time. It's helpful if you do have clothes at home that are similar that you could try on and see how they fall on the body. And that way you'll get a more accurate representation of the fabric. And then as you go, start to erase some of the body lines underneath that you might not need. Like in this instance, I can erase some of the bust lines. And I can erase some of the lines of the outside of the arm. And I'm just referencing my photo as much as possible. And it might feel kind of frustrating because you spent a lot of time trying to get the body right, and then you end up erasing some of it because it's going to be covered by clothes. So don't get too caught up when you're making your original croquis, because most likely you're going to end up covering it. Unless you know that you're going to be making a short sleeve shirt, then you might want to spend more time on the arms. Or if you know that you're going to be making a long dress that goes to the ankles, then you might not have to worry too much about what the knees or what the calves look like. So think about that ahead of time before you spend 30 minutes trying to get the perfect kneecap, because you might end up covering it depending on what you're designing. What's most important is getting the proportions correct overall underneath. Next, I'm going to add the flapper in, so I'm going to do some layers with some gestures to mimic the movement of the fringe, and I've separated out the different parts. And I'm doing really loose movements with my pencil. I don't have a tight grip on my pencil. And then I'm adding a little bit of texture and a little bit of some darker value, because that's where the fringe sort of overlap at each layer. And I'm not going too heavy with the pencil because I'm going to be adding color later, and I don't want the pencil to make everything too gray. So if you know that you're going to be adding color later, you don't have to go crazy with the pencil. And then I'm going to add some shoes. So we can only see her shoes from the front, so I'm going to add the ankle strap and just the front toe box. I'm not going to add anything really behind because of our perspective. Next, I'm just going to add some color. So this is a time lapse, and I sort of mimicked the color. I liked the color of the blazer. And normally what you might want to do is erase the pencil lines a bit more, but I wanted to keep the pencil line dark so that you could see it in the video. But normally I would draw this much lighter so that you wouldn't see the pencil, because it will make the color muddied and sort of look gray. And then I added some fun color for the dress. So this is the finished product. You could add some hair, some accessories if you'd like. So have fun!